So as you find yourself and accept
Exactly.
yourself more, you develop less of a tolerance for people encroaching on your boundaries and people having
Naturally.
those kind of behaviors that we normally would put up with when we have a lack of self, a lesser self.
And yes, and I'm also people pleasing less,
That's nice.
which is nice. But people enjoy being people pleased,
In
right?
some ways,
Um and so it has been an interesting and like the word that you use lonely and isolating, that's where for me, that's where that's showing up is like, wow, when I stop people pleasing, when I am more aligned with myself, when I really know what my values are and I'm pursuing them and aligning with them on a daily, weekly basis, there are fewer relationships that kind of like make sense.
that's so interesting. I'm also feeling tremendous sadness for you
Hmm.
because it also means that so many of those relationships may not necessarily appreciate all of you or those parts
Yeah.
of you, the deeper, more sincere parts of you.
Mm.
And I could relate to that in the way that I feel like when I was younger, also I had relationships with all sorts of folk who enjoyed the zaniness and the craziness and the
Yes.
what I consider to be the lesser parts of me,
Yes.
the less intentional parts of me.
Mhm.
And I'm now thinking as you're talking, I wonder if I was being used. Meaning that people just like having the fun ADHD around because then we're the center of attention. We take the pressure off them. We provide entertainment. Do you know that song by Nirvana, right, where the guy screams out, "Entertain us"? I feel like
Yes.
that a little bit.
Oh my goodness. That is such a word because I think so many of us ADHDers who have that, I mean, there are so many variety of ADHD, right? And not everyone with ADHD is like fun and loud and like the silly one, but I definitely did fill that role. And it sounds like that was something that you did as well. And I agree with you 100% that it was, it's not necessarily your highest self. It's not necessarily the version that you want to be known by. And how many of us are putting that out there to kind of fill a role and not necessarily using it as authenticity and then are we truly connecting or are we just filling a role?
I like that. It also helps us, or at least helps me value those who stick around
Mm,
and the people who appreciate the more intentional us,
mm,
the long-term us,
mm.
um, the aligned us.
Yeah. What does it look like for you to align with self? So you said that like on a daily basis, I think you said
Weekly.
weekly, you're aligning with self. Let me preface the question by saying I interact with a bunch of ADHDers on a daily basis. I think you do as well. And um, one of the things that I hear from them regularly is I don't really know myself. I don't really know what my values are. I don't really know who I am. And so aligning with self, I believe, is our deepest work. And it seems as though many of us have not been fully developed in that way. And so as adults now, we're saying, like, wait a second, who am I? What do I want? What are my values? So, what does it look like for you to align with self?
I love this, and, like, I'm totally gonna make a shameless plug for my book where I write this out and I spell out how to align with
Perfect.
self. I call it, like, a personal constitution.
Mm,
It really begins with 2 principles, which I feel like are well, there's really 3 principles for, like, being successful with ADHD: honesty, humility, and hard work.
mm,
It really starts with honesty
mm.
because without being honest with ourselves, it's hard to be humble.
Yeah.
And without being humble, it's hard to work. Um, so I feel like our greatest asset can be ourselves, but
Mm,
only when we can be honest with ourselves, which is why I was so touched when you were talking about your personal integrity thing,
mm.
because I feel like that being in touch with yourself is one of those cores of
Yeah.
being honest with ourselves. It begins with that. So it would be asking ourselves, like, hey, that party where I totally was the life of the party, was that
It's
my
like,
best self? Was that
really,
who I wanted to
really?
be? And
Yeah.
it could be uncomfortable because there's a part of us that wants to feel like we're good and we're awesome and everyone
Yeah.
loves us and we're just so awesome, the best. But
That's the
at the same
second.
time, once I start, I can't stop. It's a problem.
That's so
And
good.
that for like looking at ourselves, we want to feel like we're the best. We want to feel like we're awesome. But that itself is a distraction and
Yeah.
an escape from who we really are. We're
Yeah.
not the best.
Yeah.
We're pretty good.
Yeah.
We're hopefully good enough. And maybe we could
Mhm.
be like better, but we don't have to be the best. Like we could just be good enough.
Yeah.
And that acceptance allows space for humility to
Mm.
recognize that, like, we could just be good enough and that's
Mm.
okay, which then liberates us and empowers us to put in the hard work
Thing.
because we don't have to shoot for the best. We don't have to be exceptional. We don't have to be like the most awesome ever. We really don't. We could just
Yeah.
be us.
Yeah.
And like going back to like the friends thing,
Yes.
those friends who could accept us for us are usually the ones we feel safest with.
Mm.
And it's just such a yummy place to be.
It's so yummy.